I did.
Dude, now it's hit me so hard.
It hit me. I had Chinese food and I was like, oh.
Oh yeah, I always get the serious coma after Chinese.
And then I put on Tim Pool and it's like, fuck, you're asleep.
I can't deal with him.
Idea for all this really came from a dream?
Yes, it did.
Good evening and welcome to a messed up intro to Nox Mente. Tonight's guest is Salvatore Antithesis. Salvatore Antithesis is a full-time occult deconstructionalist and occasional podcaster. Born in New York City and growing up in Philly, he has moved around a lot and is considered a global brand. A basketball coach and a writer, he is thankful the gulags will have great conversation when people like him are taken away. Until then, Sal is currently writing The High Beyond, a metaphysical noir. Salvatore, welcome to the show.
Thank you guys so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a avid listener of your show.
And that's thrilling. I love that. You've been so sweet in general towards the show. I'm thrilled to have you here, and I can't wait for your book.
Well, thank you, Nish. I appreciate that. It's being worked on slowly but surely. You know, it's not the most pleasant thing to write. Just period fiction, good fiction.
So here at the beginning, give Jerry and I and the guests just a little overview of what you can give. Yeah.
I got one thing to put out there before we start.
Oh, okay.
For Adam's Tarsus's mom is in the hospital, and if everyone could send some good vibes her way, that would be great.
Oh, so sorry. Yeah, sending much love out to the Tarsus mom. We love you, Adam.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Adam, good vibes to you, Adam.
Yeah. All right.
So your
carry
book
on.
Sounds. The title is delicious, and so share what you can without giving too much away, so it doesn't get stolen. Of course.
Oh wow. Well,
you know the ideas. You know how people are.
Right. I do. So I'm trying to think of a good way to articulate this. Well, it's I kind of call it Gonzo fiction. You know, Gonzo journalism, Hunter S. Thompson.
Of course. Are you kidding?
Yeah,
Inspiration.
Of course you guys do. Yeah, of course. So it's kind of like that in the sense that it's very deriven from my own experiences, autobiographical. I've been through some pretty crazy stuff, mostly of my own chaotic making. But it's what drives a lot from that, and it kind of combines all the crazy technocratic takeover madness that we're seeing right now. But obviously I started it way before this, so I wasn't expecting it to happen while I was writing it, you know? So that kind of made it a little interesting.
Yeah.
And it just goes from there, you know? It's my way of kind of trying to get inside people's, you know, soul and wake them up a little bit without lecturing them.
Yeah, that's the way. You know, questions and presenting. This is the beautiful thing about art and literature is there's great power in that. Of course, and we all know that it gets used against us as well, but we can use it back. It's a tool.
Yeah, absolutely. And it gets kind of depressing now because I can barely even watch TV anymore. Jerry and I, because I'm a proud Jerry Cthulhu Twitter reply guy. So,
Yes.
And I love it. I fucking love it.
So Jerry and I were. So he said something about. Shared something about a plus size Wonder Woman today. Why can't Wonder Woman? You know how it is these days. So I
Yeah.
was saying about how Disney I used to be a big comic book collector and seller, and Disney just kind of drained my passion from that. So going on based on what you were saying, they kill these stories. They use them for propaganda and social engineering, and they put in all these agendas and these political nonsense and hide all sorts of weird child sex and other occult shit into it that who knows what it's doing to us on a subconscious level. That's why, that kind of work's important to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so you like the curvy boom boom girls, huh?
Oh, who doesn't?
What does that mean?
Well, you mentioned a plus size Wonder Woman.
Read my tweet.
Yeah, I think
she'll see
that
it.
Jerry's the one that shared it.
Yeah,
Well,
basically.
Jerry's an equal opportunity.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm a chubby chaser.
I love everyone. I love everyone equally also.
I do too.
Yeah, heads up. I love curvy women myself, so I love seeing it. Definitely love seeing it. I love the idea of a Wonder Woman with some boom boom.
Well,
So,
my point was,
yeah.
if you read
But
my
with
tweet,
that, let's do it. Let's get into Nox Mente.
I was muted. I'm sorry.
What were you saying, Jared?
I was saying a bunch of shit.
Oh, dude, let it out on us. Come on now. So, curvy Wonder Woman.
Tonight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tell us about
I
it.
put a link to that tweet in chat, into our chat too. And my point more was that comic book superheroes and comic books are meant to escape reality, and the whole point of it is that they're not reality, and they're ruining comics by injecting our reality into our fantasy.
And
Yes.
that's kind of where I was coming from too. It wasn't necessarily anything against curvy women, obviously.
Right.
But it was Jerry pretty much hit the nail on the head there. It's the same thing with sports,
Yes.
It's not that I disagree. There's some issues in this country that need to be talked about, but I don't want to see it in my sports. You know what I mean? That's not what I watch sports for,
Right. It's bad enough that identitarianism's gotten into government, but now it's in our entertainment. It's like, no.
Yeah, I mean, well, government, let's be honest. Government, who said that? Who said that? You would probably know this, Jerry or Nish, you too. Who said that government is the entertainment branch of the military-industrial complex? Was that Frank Zappa, maybe? I think it was Frank Zappa.
I think so. Is it that or Carlin?
Someone like that, yeah.
Love both of them. They're both just
All right.
needed. Absolutely needed.
Carry on. I'll go back to the chats.
But that is the point, though. I like to see. So I don't have skin in any game as far as like the body movement and all that. But I do I get tired of the same old stuff being pushed at us, especially when it comes to ideals. And it's clear to me, and it's been clear to me a very long time, especially having been in the modeling field, that there's definitely an agenda there, and it's a deep agenda. So I like seeing I guess the idea of reality and choices come into the playing field. This is how we structure our dreams too when we're lucid. It's about an individual thing, and especially unless your dreams have been co-opted, you are constructing your world in the way it serves you, even if it's in a deep analysis type of way where you're working through your own shit, so to speak. So on that note,
okay, never mind.
No, Jerry, go on. I can't see you when I can't see you.
Oh, geez, there, I'm on camera.
Thank you. I need the physical cues, Jerry.
I was going to say there's only one thing I hate. It's being told what to think and say.
Yeah, bingo. And that's what do they do though with all of this?
It doesn't matter who the they is. It just
it's the they in advertising, right?
Yeah.
So it's not. It's just time for some realism, and not like propped up realism.
Put it this way: I remember when liberal meant free thinking.
Oh yeah. Oh Lord.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's all. This is another case for upside down world. The end. We've gone through the hooking glass.
It's
It's
fucking
the other
clown
side.
world.
Idiocracy is now a documentary.
Yeah, it's a documentary. All right. Get on with the show, damn it. I'll quit interrupting.
Sorry. People that are here for Nox Mente, which is dream content, sorry. We are having a little bit of levity at the beginning. So, again, it's a pleasure to have you here, Sal. And why don't you start by giving us a little bit of your background, the earliest you can recall, and the things that inspired you, that stick out now, or even scared you.
I was definitely a bit of a rebellious child. A lot of energy. I got very bored in school very easily. I think that's a common thing amongst people that end up in our circles. Lack of stimulation, maybe, within the educational system. As far as the dreaming and the consciousness kind of stuff goes, I always kind of looked at things on a different level. I felt as everyone else. I remember seeing things as a kid. You know, vines on trees that were evil monster feet, things like that. Active imagination. You know. As far as dreaming goes, I've always I got into lucid dreaming within the past 5 years, and that's been really cool. Sometimes I don't dream as much as I would like because I smoke marijuana before bed. So sometimes it kills it, but sometimes it also really stimulates it as well. And I think keeping a dream journal was something that really helped with that for me. But as far as the earliest kind of things I remember, it's coming up. It's moving around a lot as a child. My dad got transferred a lot for work, so there was a lot of that. I grew up with a younger brother and a younger sister. So I was a pretty normal kid. It was just I was always kind of hyper and seeing things on a different level. I was always attracted to the fantasy and the science fiction kind of stuff, which I'm realizing now as you get older and you see the Orwells coming true and the Huxleys and all that. You kind of see why later on in hindsight that I was drawn to that type of stuff.
What kind of relationship did you have with the natural world?
Well, I would say I'm more of a city person, but as far as nature goes, I always liked being outside. Like I grew up before the internet. Obviously, I'm 35. So I think I was towards the end of that generation of people who grew up outside. When I moved to Philadelphia, we had a nice area in the back that had some nice woods in it, things like that. There's deer, a lot of wildlife, foxes, crawfish. So I was definitely out there a lot when I would come home from school. I'd be out there playing in the creek, doing all sorts of things that you could almost look back now and say were almost rituals, from an occult perspective. Which I think when you get into that kind of thing later in life, I think everyone kind of looks back a little bit and sees that they were kind of practicing these kind of magical things for a long time before they were conscious of what it actually was. And I've always found that kind of thing interesting, and that's kind of the what I kind of lean to in my writing is what's underneath the natural world. Like superficially, the beauty, that's all amazing, but I want to get down to what makes it tick. The metaphysicalness of it, the relationships between the sun and the plants, and why trees grow towards the sun when they're on a hill, and you can predict these behaviors like clockwork. And but at the same time, there's always these things that stand out as anomalies, and you see these repeating patterns in nature, and these are things that always attracted me. And I think later in life, it was, and I think early on I had kind of a I don't want to say a lack of choices, because I was reading a lot as a kid, but I was brought up pretty religious, not like super religious. I went to Catholic school. We went to church on Sunday. It wasn't much more than that. I went to Catholic school, which I wasn't super psyched about as a kid, but now seeing everything that's going on in the world, I'm actually pretty grateful for, because as much as there is a religious angle to it, if anything, that kind of just rooted me in the need for a spiritual practice when you delve into kind of alternative practices that involve, lucid dreaming or occult work, things like shadow work, things like that.
So when you were when you were little and with this relationship with nature that you were talking about, you say something very significant from at least my perspective is this is always how I've noticed the natural witchy type people, that you can look at them, you can see their relationship with the elements, with the natural world, and it's just apparent to me to see who's who. And so I've always just called that like the natural witches. And of course, you know that my idea of a witch is way different than has found its way through like literature and especially historical documents. So I'm not surprised to hear that from you. And I just kind of I felt like that might be where you were coming from all along. And then this beauty in the Catholic Church separated from all the fuckery is something, yeah, those of you that did get brought up with it should be proud of. It's a beautiful, beautiful religion. And those ceremonies are high magic to me. And I think they also create a good foundation for uh, ritual work that finds its way into our unconscious through the dreamscape. Don't you think?
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Nish. There is a lot of it is just very, the aesthetic is very I don't want to, I guess, unique maybe, but it's also very influential. Like a lot of things came out of that aesthetic because it's been around for a while, you know. And there's a lot of, that's what kind of the root of what I was getting to was when within my dream life and when you're out there messing with this kind of esoteric and occult kind of practices, I think it's really good to be rooted in a solid spiritual foundation, the nature of which is kind of insignificant to me. I think that you just need to have it, and you need to have that belief to put somewhere. Because I believe belief is very important. That's almost my core belief. I look at belief, and this is kind of almost like a chaos magic way of looking at things. I believe belief is like a mana bar in a video game almost. You have a certain amount of it, you know, in a day, in a week, in a year, in a lifetime. You got to be careful where you put it. And when we look around the world now, everyone is having that mana bar being like kind of what Jerry was just saying. Everyone's kind of having it, being told where to put that mana and that energy and that, you know, I think it's very important to have that belief. And I think it absolutely, you can take, there's also something else that goes on today is this all or nothing mentality where you have to believe everything or nothing someone says. Because like, I totally don't agree with everything within the Catholic Church. Like you said, there's a lot of fuckery, but there's also a lot of beauty. And you know, I try to take what good I can out of anything, you know, whether it be the Catholic Church or Jordan Peterson, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's important to be rooted in that have that spiritual practice to fall back on, that when you start doing psychonautic activities, I guess would be the best way to articulate it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It definitely. When you were young, what was your relationship with the dreamscape? How did you navigate it? What did you think about it?
It was, I mean, it was a big part of my life. I had an active imagination from day one, you know, and I was already kind of hyper kid. So I would almost look forward to going to bed. It was, you know, you make that place that you go to. I think maybe we all do this as kids. You have that place in your head that's, you know, it's almost like Fight Club, like the safe space with the penguins and whatnot. You have that place you create, or I created when I was going to bed at night, and it became a routine to go to that place. And from there, who knows what I was doing? Like I was saying earlier, in hindsight, you realize some of the things you were doing were magical practices, you know? And I think that was kind of the start of it for me, was being able to go there and at 5 and 6 years old, doing some transcendental meditation, like breathing and focusing on my consciousness and pondering the concept of infinity, like like heaven, hearing things like the concept of heaven, something that never ends. I remember that drove me nuts. It didn't sound fun to me. I don't want to go to heaven. I don't want to go somewhere that never ends. That sounds terrible. I don't care if it's nothing but good. These are the questions I was asking at like 5 and 6 years old, whether to be to the priest or the teacher or just in my own head, you know? it didn't sound pleasant to me. And these are questions that, you know, aren't really encouraged within that system. So it was kind of inevitable for me to delve outside of it. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what that place was, the dreamscape I was creating. Who knows if it was, you know, me experimenting with astral projection, things like that, whatever you want to call it, at a young age. I'm sure it was, you know, and it's cool. I look back upon those times very fondly.
Still in that space, what was your relationship with the weirding? So things that, in context to your space where you were, your life, the things that were considered weird, and that can be inclusive into, say, the general scope of stuff, which is the ET stuff and fairies and the thing under the bed and all that. Whatever the context was, what was your relationship to it?
It was enticing and alluring, but also enough fear to not always face it on fully. Like, I definitely saw some things as a kid, which, who knows, when you're a kid, who knows, you know, because I truly do believe that kids are not quite as maybe broken in as we are, and they still see things that we can't. I think they possess this ability that you kind of lose as life hardens you. So who knows if that's what I was seeing or if it was just in my own head, but I definitely saw a lot of things that were weird. I was definitely drawn to it. From a very young age, I was drawn to monster movies and science fiction. And you know, I would get in trouble in grade school for when I would get creative writing assignments. I would get in trouble for always writing about, you know, fantasy or science fiction, which just kind of goes back to my other statement about how it's just kind of people who have that kind of mind that needs to explore consciousness before they even know that's what it is. I feel like that's kind of stifled for very obvious reasons early on. But like I said earlier, I'm kind of glad that I was among there was at least some sort of spiritual aspect to what I was around.
So when you were getting questioned in school about writing these subjects, how did your parents feel?
Oh, that's a good one. I bet you my dad's listening right now. Hi, Dad. You can turn it off now. Just kidding.
Hi, Salvatore's dad.
So yes,
Is his name Guido?
It's Guido Sarducci. Yeah.
Nunzio, like my grandfather.
My gramps was Dan. What's his name? Daniello Donatello. No, Emilio Donatello.
Oh. Well, I mean, Cthulhu is definitely an Italian last name.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, my real last name is Ablin, which is actually Lebanese. So.
Oh, cool. Well, as far as my parents went when I was doing these kind of things, I think they were, you know, I don't think I was the first kid too, you know, so it was kind of an experiment for them as well. It was the first time experiencing it, and I was kind of I was the most intense they were going to get, you know, you know, and I was the most intense most people were going to get when I was a kid. But I think that, you know, that's a really good question, Nish. I never really thought about that, to be honest. So,
well, I'm assuming, you seem were they supportive of you in general? It seems like you were a little bit of you were their strangeling in a way.
I was. They were absolutely supportive in the sense that, you know, they supported me there at my baseball games, things like that. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I was tough. I was a tough kid. Like, I was always acting up. I got kicked out of schools and things, but it wasn't for I wasn't like that asshole kid that was doing drugs when he was 12. Like, I didn't really start getting into that stuff till I was like 18. You know, that was later on. This was just me just being difficult and a rebel and not accepting authority at face value, you know, and not being that drone that they kind of want you to be, you know. And I just always was that. And I think that's kind of where they came at. They didn't like that. And they thought, because I think the way it was presented to them was that kind of attraction to fantasy and science fiction was a symptom of this kind of rebellious behavior, maybe. And I don't, at that time, you know, it's the 90s, you know. I'm just very, very grateful. They never, like, I know a lot of teachers told my mom and dad, and props to you guys if you're listening to this, they never put me on anything. Because you know how teachers are always like, riddle in this, that, this, the next thing. That's something I'm very grateful for. They never fell for that trap.
Yeah, that's a gift. That's a gigantic gift, and it's against the grain. Yeah, props to your parents for that as well, and to having raised you, with your rebel gene and everything. I love that rebel gene. You know this. This is, in the end, the rebel gene is kind of a rare thing when you put it up against the masses. So by
all you gotta do is
questioning,
look around. Just look around right now.
exactly. We're seeing, it's like a litmus test.
Yeah, but you need people like us. That's why they want to stomp out that kind of questioning so badly, because that's why they want to turn it into two extremes, because that kind of questioning is dangerous to them. It really is. It's such a cliche, but that's really what gets them. That's what you have to do. You need people who are going to be like, look, like, this is fucked up. Like, you can't believe what they're saying about this. You have to understand there's this, and this interest behind it. Please, like, this isn't QAnon. I'm not like however you feel about that, whatever. It's not even that deep. You've been conditioned to see it as that deep because your mind is filling in the blanks about what I believe because of the same thing I'm talking about.
And these rules can be applied, like everything, to the dream realm. It's completely interconnected with this experience we're having right now.
That's where half my dreams go these days. Because you have those dreams. I'm sure everybody has them. I've heard them talked about on this show 100 times. Where you're trying to fight and you can't punch. You just like feel like you're in molasses. You're trying that. I think that comes from that dream. Not being able or feeling helpless among what's going on. I think because that's really, when you look at Jung's work on dreams, that's really what he's talking about. I was just reading a quote by him like 10 minutes, 20 minutes before he came on the show. He was saying about how your mind that is connected to the material turns off its inhibitions when you go to sleep, and that's why you start. His work with symbols, I know a lot of us are familiar with that. It's kind of like your mind's way. To me, it's all connected to the same consciousness root. All these things are connected.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that,
when you
carry on, Salvatore. Hello?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, now I can.
Okay, it went dead for a second. I think I walked out of my Wi-Fi. That was my fault.
We'll get back into this dream with us.
What did you? What was the last thing you heard me say?
Well, you're talking about the Jung quote that you were just reading.
Okay, yeah, he said that when your body lays down to go to bed, your mind ceases to run the inhibition programs that it has to kind of protect itself from the daily arrows and pokes of reality. It's kind of minimized the pain that you go through. So that's kind of what the dream world is to me. It's your mind communicating to me in symbols the same way that Disney would in a movie. They're kind of the way they use those symbols is kind of to talk to that same level of consciousness, if you're asking me. It's to get somewhere in there, and then you're unconsciously, subconsciously, when you go to sleep at night, when you enter the dreamscape, especially when you're unaware of it, more so, but I think even when you're aware of it, it affects you to a degree. I think ideas are being implanted with us that we're being forced to subconsciously figure out, that are kind of occupying us and distracting us from our own, shadow work, for lack of a better term, however you want to put that. That constant grind, stay on top of yourself and not fall into your bad habits and this and that, the next thing,
Yeah, absolutely. Let's bring this into, say, the world we're seeing around us, the outer world, that is definitely a collective reflection of inner stuff from the masses, from the great void. What do you think? Where's the control? How do we get control how is this happening, Salvatore? How do you see this connecting to us individually, all this craziness?
You're talking about reality itself, like the
apparent
matrix, if
reality
you will,
around us. Yeah.
Yeah, the matrix is what you're talking about, for lack of a better term. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think, I'm somewhere. I think that we have a lot more control over reality than we think. I think that in a way it is almost part of the dreamscape but you have to figure out what that means to you individually. I think that means something different to everyone. I think there's kind of a line. And I think if you delve too deep into some of this stuff, that line gets very blurred. It could be kind of dangerous, on a couple of different levels. But to me, a lot of people, I've heard the theory that we're kind of all applying, like everything is just a collective illusion. It's this mass consciousness being applied outwardly. I could buy that. Reality, I've seen reality be malleable enough in my life, in my experience, that I can't disprove that. I certainly don't think it's a simulation from a traditional angle, like a perspective as that, because I think that, forgive me if I think don't get me wrong, I think it's a very good way to start to look at it. I think it's very helpful to some people to start. I just think it discredits. It is kind of like the same thing as saying we're floating on a ball in space and we're just randomly exist. I kind of think it's along those same lines, and it's very, because I think a lot of this technology stuff, while I don't think it's inherently evil, I think a lot of it's being used to almost trap souls on this realm within this matrix, if you will. But that's a whole nother story, we can get into. That's kind of a theme of my book, The High Beyond, a Metaphysical Noir. So I could see it, but to me, simulation theory it's almost ancient Hermetic mysticism for atheists, if that makes sense. It's like their mind.
Yeah, I like that. I like that description.
It's their mind trying to wrap itself around something that's bigger than that. And it kind of is in a way a simulation, but it's just not giving it enough credit to me. It puts it in this box, and it almost excuses a way to not appreciate beauty in a way. To me, it still comes from that nihilistic root to me. And I could be wrong. This is just my personal take, But like I said, I think it's a good way to start to look at it that way, and to realize that you can play around with reality, and there are things. I'm a big fan of Rudolph Steiner. I think his work is seminal when it comes to this kind of stuff. Absolutely seminal.
So in your, okay, so let's get to some basics here. How do you dream? What does the dreamscape look like and feel like to you?
It took a lot of work for me to start to realize I was dreaming, to be able to be lucid. It took me a lot of work to do that, because it's very often, more often than not, it's very fantastical, and things may be off. How things are just are there, but they're not quite right. But you don't really pay attention to it because something crazy is always kind of going on. I get a lot of that. Like a lot of people say it's just something just looks off, and sometimes it's they say I started learning to become lucid by looking at my hands. That was one way that I learned to control it. But even still, I sometimes, even when do you ever? Let me ask you this, Nish. When you become lucid when you're dreaming, do you ever get to the point where yes, you control yourself, but things still feel completely out of control within the dreamscape?
Yeah, that's when I recognize, at least, that it's not all part of my psyche, and then I'm in a bigger field. And then, of course, when I say field, I'm mostly thinking about the Tesla field. And so that's kind of one of my little checkpoints is am I able to control everything in here while being lucid, or am I not? And if I'm not, then it becomes this almost treasure hunt of consciousness of, well, what do I have control over? And that's when I kind of hone down what's not me.
Is that what you were talking about earlier when you mentioned dreams being co-opted?
Well, yeah, there's a lot going on with that idea. and I like the work that Solaris Blue Ravens brought with the electrical overlay into that. This is where I find personally that it's very important to do this self work and understand who you are, what's your voice, what are your thoughts, and so doing some of this self analysis. And I'm a big fan of self analysis. All the tools are out there. I know this is very the controversy of it, controversial, but I have found I have gone to great heights personally doing self-analysis, although I've been under analysis though also. So, but digging in the dirt of one's soul is important so that I know my voice, so that I know what my reactions generally are, and that I'm not actually interacting with the piece of my psyche. Say, in the Jungian sense, my feeling function's not interacting with my thinking function that is now being autonomous and coming forth as a character in the dreamscape, so that I can parse myself out, basically. And this is another thing this is another way in which I find myself navigating the outer world, is when I'm in a stable mind and of a stable place, I start looking for anomalous stuff like synchronicities, and I will start reading synchronicities. If you're not stable and grounded when doing this is dangerous water. It's like summoning in Paimon without having done all the prep work. You need to be stable, because just like Nietzsche, the whole Nietzsche thing, stare into the void and it stares back.
Oh yeah.
And so that I navigate my dream world in the same way, Salvatore. It's always one little bit at a time. It's never been one kind of a awakening, although I'm waiting for that. And I hear and read that happens, but it's kind of a slow roll for me.
Yeah, I think more as far as spiritual awakenings go, I without a doubt. I mean, I've had them in my dream life for sure, without a doubt. But they're a lot fewer than they are in my, real life, or whatever we're going to call it. And I they talk about that. You know what I think a phenomenal book is, because I spent some time working in the behavioral health, addiction, criminal behavior field down in Florida for a while. And I read the first, the first, I think it's 164 pages of the Big Book of AA by Bill W. The back is all like stories, people's stories from, how they got better. But that book, believe it or not, actually pertains a lot to that same kind of work. And he goes into dreams in it, believe it or not. And he was doing all sorts of stuff, Bill W. After he stopped drinking, he was doing all sorts of stuff with lucid dreaming and hallucinogenics, and he was staying with hippies and doing all sorts of crazy drug cocktails. Still training. He was still thirsty, for searching, because this might be a whole other topic. But when it comes to alcoholics, when they get as bad as someone like Bill W., you approach wet brain and things of that nature. I think a lot of that is seeking the same thing we are. It's seeking God. It's seeking some sort of spiritual peace. It's almost there. It's a lot more terrible, I think, but it's almost a dreamscape they're navigating. I think everyone's kind of doing the same thing. We all do it in a different way. And I think with the dreamscape, if you pay attention to it, it's certainly one of the most effective ways to do it. And there's certainly a ton of really good literature out there to aid within doing that. And Jung is certainly among them. Even all these, we're close to 100 years later, right, with Jung? And he's still as significant as ever. His work is crazy cool when it comes to dreams and all that.
Oh yeah, Jung's work is singular, and a lot of Jungians that have come from the cult of Jung are sadly not to par, in my opinion. It's difficult. I love the first wave of Jungians that were friends with Jung, and Francis Wicks and Esther Harding and all those. It seems like the further away we get from that early movement, the more watered down the work becomes. And of course, this is not a surprise, although there's always an undercurrent and there are people moving forward that are edgy with it. And as more material from the personal life of Jung and the personal life of Freud and how they interlapped and where they came about this whole theory and how they validated the dream existence and the power of dreaming and where it can take one, especially as in their personal lives, and how they were searching. It's juicy. It's very juicy. It's gritty, and it's a reminder that we can do this on our own. They had an obligation to try and fit all of this rather esoteric material into a scientific paradigm for their colleagues so that it could come in and be recognized and acknowledged. Otherwise, it was still the realm of the fairies. It was still Santa Claus land. It was pushed away. And so Jung really legitimized, as did Freud, although I'm definitely in the Jung camp when they separate, these deeper esoteric searchings and wanderings and seeking of the soul and trying to understand what the soul is. And I guess that brings me to my next question for you. In your experience in your lifetime of dreaming and with the dreamscape, what kinds of experiences have you encountered in that realm, in that field, that have led you to where you are now with your thinking of that there is more out there, that there is something extra, the encounters with others?
That's just oh man, that's a tough question to even articulate into words, because so many of the things I see there on that wavelength really exist outside the realm of like words themselves. You know what I mean? It's like I rate. I guess the best way I would describe when I run into things like that, it's not super often, but there's been, it's often malevolent feeling, whether it actually is or not. A lot of that probably is who knows, egregore type situation, who knows, but it's a lot of that. When I encounter things like that, it almost feels like it's a something that I need to face within myself that I'm not yet aware of, and it's trying to point me in the right direction, maybe. Same time warning, because I've noticed sometimes when you go through trauma, like when you work with in behavioral health, you see a lot of trauma. So many people put up defense mechanisms within themselves to prevent themselves from dealing with the pain of processing what they went through. I think we all do that to a degree, and in turn, that's why the dream life becomes important, because this is a way to do this on a level that kind of eases you into the discomfort and slowly lets you, like you were saying, it's a slow trudge. I think it's kind of designed to be that way. I think the white light experiences are just almost a physical reaction. It's almost like our brain's reward system for doing something that we needed to do to evolve on this level, to evolve our consciousness. Because that's all, when you get down to it, what is the brain's reward system really? Whether you believe in evolution or how much you believe in it or not, it exists to a degree, Whether we came from monkeys or not is another story, but I think our brain's reward system is there to tell us, yeah, you're doing the right thing, like keep going, And I think that's when you're going through these white light spiritual experiences, what is it? It's DMT, it's serotonin, it's dopamine, and what these are, whether DMT is a biochemical, portal to some higher plane, or whether it's a chemical we use to symbolically trudge through our dream life. I think this is a reward for continuing to attack things that aren't easy to attack and are very easy to say, fuck it, It's very easy to ignore this stuff and say, I got it. Or the way I kind of try to put it to people when we're talking about these things and going into whenever, I'm talking to a close friend who's going through troubles in life or whatever, I always say that the one thing that one thing we have inside ourselves that you think you don't have to deal with, that you think you can just get around forever without really having to tell anyone or do anything about, that you could just live your life, whatever it was. It could be something so stupid, but you've attached so much emotional prana, as James True would put it, which is the belief in the Anabar I was talking about earlier. You've attached so much emotion and prana to it that you've like calcified it and turned it into this thing that was so dumb to begin with. You should have done it. It doesn't matter what it is. If you're not facing it, it's you're not going to be able to evolve spiritually, and that's when you kind of harden up in life, and things don't go as smoothly as they could, and you stop appreciating the finer things, and it kind of just stays with you. It's a weight inside you. That makes sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing how large and out of control a monster can get, one's monsters can get and become, both internally and then externally is projected into the outer world, how paralyzing a fear can be. And then when you look back, you can also see how we've enabled ourselves to use fears as crutches and place a lot of weight on these crutches to, I'm not even sure to what ends, to avoid something at the kernel, the core, that may be tiny and just needs to be dealt with. This is why shadows can be so large and cast on the cave wall. They can be so large and scary, and then at some point so distorted that you don't even know what it is. In your dream life, how often do you experience, and this is over your lifetime, things that are fearful, coming upon your own fears, or even things that feel like they're autonomous fears that seem like they're not part of you?
I'd say it's a big part of it, because I'll tell you, one of the most powerful things when you're excuse me, I'm sorry. One of the most powerful things I would hear about within dream lives when I was working in behavioral health would be drug dreams. People would talk about those. They would wake up sweating, and these are people who had been. These are like, I would hear this from other people who worked there who had been sober for 9-10 years. They come in and talk about waking up sweating because they thought they got high, and it was like that real in their dream. And it's that the fear is that powerful. I've definitely experienced things like that, and that's the kind of thing that makes me wonder, because is that the way I interpret dreams, that's kind of like a rogue variable to me. Because when you look at that, it doesn't really make sense from like an evolutionary perspective, from a growth perspective. Is it just a warning sign, like stay away from this stuff, or is it something deeper than that? Like, what is it in someone that's been sober for 9 or 10 years that they're still dreaming about the demon that haunted them 10 years ago? You know what I mean? That's something I wonder about. Is that, because for me, I don't encounter fear as much as I do. I'd say the fear is more a problem for me personally in my everyday life, just in stupid areas I have to just sit and breathe, and it's more like anxiety than it is pure fear. But it's just sit, breathe, get over it, and then you go about your day. I think that's very beneficial, and I think it kind of might be the same. I think that's why learning to become lucid is so important, because especially if you're continually experiencing fear within your dreams. Because to learn how to conquer it, I think that helps in that area. I think that's where the dream life is most beneficial.
How
Is
much
conquering fear.
have you experienced sleep paralysis?
I have, yeah. Not since I was probably 12 or 13 years old, but it happened a couple times when I was a kid. Yeah.
Could you share at least one of those stories?
It's a very hard feeling to explain. And the night before, I remember hearing I don't know what it was, but it was I don't think it was like a cat in heat, but maybe like a fox or something. I don't know if they do that, but it was a very strange noise. Like I said, my parents' house growing up, we had the woods in the backyard, the forest. And I heard that, and the next morning I woke up. It was not quite light out, but you kind of knew. You kind of had that dreadful feeling that you were going to have to go to school. But it was kind of it was kind of deeper than that. It was it felt a little darker than that, a little more empty. It was almost like you were looking. I was looking for that fear, but it wasn't quite that. If you know what I mean, like the best way I can describe it is if you wake up on a Saturday when you've been working all week and you don't have to wake up, and it's like a great feeling, and you just kind of like put your head back down, like go back to bed. It's kind of like the opposite of that. It was it was a tightness in my chest. I couldn't move. You know, this was before I had the internet or I could look it up or anything, and I kind of just I I don't want to say I felt another. I definitely didn't see a presence. I don't want to say I felt the presence, but it felt like there was something else there, whatever it was, be it an omen or whatever, a presence, an entity, within that feeling of emptiness and darkness that I felt within, and I don't really know how long it lasted. It was a very weird feeling. It felt like it lasted probably longer than it actually did. Kind of like a DMT trip in a way. And there's a lot of theories out there that say that there's not a lot known about sleep paralysis. There are theories out there that say DMT is involved in it, especially when people see other things that are often described very similar to what people describe they see when they're on DMT. So they say that's one of the things that most fascinates me right there is the DMT aspect of dreaming, and whether it's a biochemical portal or what function it has in symbolic understanding and decoding of dreams. So I don't know if it was the DMT that was involved in sleep paralysis or if it was something deeper. And the other times it was when I was a bit younger. I don't know if I had that much wherewithal. But the last time I was 12 or 13, so I kind of remember it a little more vividly. And I remember when I was a child too, I wouldn't really call it sleep paralysis, but there was times where I felt things and presences, and it's hard to explain. Yeah, it's you don't really tell anyone. You don't really tell your parents or your friends. Or sometimes you'll try to scare your brother, or your sister with it. I've done that, but you're going to be called crazy sometimes when you're a kid. You think when you talk about stuff like that, but it's happened to me once or twice for sure. It's not a fun experience.
Yeah, they never, sleep paralysis has really never stopped for me. And interestingly, it was just recently I had one, and it was the worst that I can recall in a long time, where I could, usually I can usually I can get out of it, or I know I can relax into it and know that it's going to pass, and whatever seems fearful goes away, or I confront it. There are different scenarios that are evolving for me constantly. So this one, I try to do everything I could. I tried the Rincolier of trying to eat it. And I was terrorized by it, and there was nothing. I appeared to have no power over the process, to the point where I kept trying to get into my body and get my body functioning, and then also fight this apparent thing off from around me. And it was not there was nothing I could do. And usually, rationally especially, there's a moment where you have control. I have control, I should say. And I can, like I said earlier, either relax into it and it eases up and I'm able to wake up, or redirect myself further into the dream experience, and I was not granted either option, and so I was basically being held hostage in the room because it would guard the door, and I wasn't able to pop out. It was in this limbo state, so I couldn't, whatever the physics were there, I wasn't able to
So
just.
can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah,
Not
of
to interrupt,
course.
but when it happens to you, does it always involve a presence, or is it?
No, not at all. Oftentimes it doesn't involve a presence, and I don't know exactly what's going on. And this is why early on in my dream life, I thought I was dying or dead. I'm trying to get back into my corpse. And
When was that? When would you say that is? Like early on? What do you mean by early on?
Well, early on with my experience of sleep paralysis. So, and still there have been times in.
I just meant how old were you? Would you say when you mean when you say early on? When are you talking about as far as your life goes?
Well, I've been a conscious being in this experience since before my mother and I were trying to figure it out. But at the latest was 6 months old, because we moved out of the house I described to her when I was 6. So, but she was telling me that
So you're talking about that far back when you're talking about this. So you remember sleep paralysis that far back?
Yeah, I remember.
Holy shit.
Remember tons of stuff that far back. I have a very, very good, long and hard memory. And although, as we know, memory is very fallible, and it is absolutely tied into the idea of dreaming. There is no difference. And one of the ways in which we give ourselves a leeway into the fact that this is a memory versus this is a dream or imagination or whatnot is the fact that we can pull up photos or video of us being in another time within this life. And I am not 100% tied to any theory at this point in my life. It's all on the table, all of it, and then some. So, but this is one of the reasons why Nox Mente exists, is trying to traverse this terrain of what's real, what's Memorex, and what's live, and facsimile, and memory, and dream, and this plane and that plane. It's all up in the air, Salvatore. I mean, do you have real conviction about anything? Seriously?
No. I mean, I think that's a great way to put it. I think that I think it goes back to what I was saying. I kind of live my life by this video game bar theory, that not in a simulation sense, but in the fact that you have this limited amount of belief and energy to put your things into. And that's how magic can work. When you put your belief into this, I think that when you do that, I totally just lost my train of thought. Can you say the question one more time?
Well, I think at the core, the question is, what is real?
Right. Okay. Oh. I think that
there's some philosophical.
Yeah, that's a deep one. I think that it goes back to belief. Like what you're applying your belief to is, because when you're asking me because that's what it was. From what conviction do I have? I think it's a very good way to put it. Is when you were saying what belief you apply, what energy you apply, what you apply your belief into is what you're going to amplify in your life. So I try to operate my life without applying that belief, or to consciously apply that belief to whatever I need to apply it to at any given time. So no, I don't really have any convictions. I'm not emotionally attached to any idea. I have my theories, but that's what they are. They're theories. If someone, like I was just talking about the simulation theory, if someone showed up to me tomorrow and I just saw a great meme where you see the silica gel things and like beef jerky, it says do not eat, that keeps it moist, I guess, keeps moisture out maybe.
Did Jerry make it?
Maybe.
No.
He's the meme master.
he eats the silica gel, right? And they're like, congratulations. He wakes up and you're like, congratulations, you broke out of the simulation, you know? Like if that happened to me tomorrow,
Oh man.
I'd be like, I was wrong, but it wouldn't bother me. That's the thing. And that's why it's kind of so hard for, I think, some of us who traverse this way to get through, because we're on this level where we're trying to seek for things, and everyone else is attaching emotion to everything and investing in this and that and the next thing, and it becomes like a fight over what reality is or isn't. And it shouldn't be that way. You know, if we all just kind of started doing a little bit more of the stuff that we talk about in this podcast, however you feel about it, just working on yourself in your own way, whatever works for you, you know, we wouldn't have to worry about outside systems. Things would kind of form on their own and in a natural, organic way. And I think it would be much more harmonious. And
Yeah,
I think that belief you're asking about is kind of the problem in a way, and the solution.
you're absolutely right. And I think most people that when they come down and think about it, the outside world doesn't affect their life that much.
Yeah.
You know, when what you see on TV and the news and all that doesn't really affect you that much when it comes down to it. And to get emotionally attached and involved in that is just stealing your energy.
Exactly what it is. And I think that's what I mean. That's what we could talk about this. This is, I think, and this, I'm probably not the only person to say this. You know, you see the way this stuff works is you see this, the way this energy, this way, this belief, everyone gets this belief flowing into one place, whether it's a meme or whatever. Like yesterday or 3 days ago, whatever, Kamala Harris, the wrestler, died. And the next day, Kamala Harris is named vice presidential candidate. I'm not trying to get into politics. I'm just saying, like, you get all this positive, nostalgic, prana belief energy flowing towards the name of Kamala Harris. And you do some weird Super Bowl halftime-esque show ritual and channel it into the campaign, right? Isn't that kind of like the nature, or is that really just a coincidence? And I'm the psycho in this situation.
I don't know. I mean,
You know,
I saw that happen too, and it's like, and in my small circle of people, of friends, they're like, is it a sacrifice? I'm like, well, I don't know.
But that's the thing, though, right? That's what Nish is just talking about. Like, that's one of those things that's so bizarre. It's like, what is happening to reality right now? Like, what?
Oh, it's fucked up.
It's just crazy. Like, what is real right now? What reality is what right now? I can't even believe that Kamala Harris, the wrestler, dies, and 13 fucking hours later, Kamala Harris is named the vice fucking president.
It's a resurrection.
Like, how the fuck does that happen, dude?
It's a resurrection. I don't know. I think my little pet theory right now is that the collective consciousness is schizophrenic, so it's exhibiting schizophrenic things in our reality.
See, that's good, and I love that, and I kind of like SMQs too. Like he gets into some areas that I don't really agree with, but when he says that we all died in 2012, I find that fascinating.
Yeah, we would never know.
Yeah, and then we're just all traumatized and kind of stuck in this state of limbo in some kind of dream world, trying to figure it out. And, you know, that's very interesting to me.
There's a few people that I follow right now that have come out and said that they believe that, I don't know how to put this, the script we've been running in our reality stopped or ended or whatever, that our matrix is no longer on autopilot. We're driving it right now. And that I can go along with, because things are so crazy. If you left the general public to run things and we did co-create the reality as a collective, this is what we'd get.
So you're saying, okay, so I think, was it Freeman? Because I know you guys just had Freeman on. I haven't listened yet, but was it him who said that?
No.
Oh, it wasn't? Because he said something similar or whatever. And I like that. I like that, the idea that a reality is almost up for grabs. When you're saying the script is done, like, are you talking about the controllers that are doing the rituals and shit on this plane, or are you talking about entities outside, or what do you mean by that? The script?
So, yeah, I'm not a big believer in that whole ritual satanic thing. I mean, I'm sure it goes on, but I don't think it really drives the narrative.
Okay.
There's an overall energy that's, steering the boat, as it were.
Yeah.
and
See,
that's
I think
that's
I
a
think that's the
program.
whole.
I think that's a program in the quote unquote matrix, and that's what these people think, that program has ended.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, that's definitely. I mean, I love that. I love. It makes sense, man. There's just so much bizarre stuff going on right now. It's just to even think about it is like, oh man. I know James True was saying that this is he calls it the best apocalypse ever, and by apocalypse he's meaning, because the word literally means
Really,
rebirth. You know what I mean?
revealing.
So yeah, exactly. A revelation, a rebirth, or whatever. Yeah, exactly. And he's saying that the sun is actually waking people up. And that's why I have us all wearing fucking masks to block out the sun from waking us up.
Yeah, and that's
I find
why
that fascinating. Cool. Like,
right. It's also the chemtrails or whatever, the solar radiation management. Everything that's being sprayed in the sky is blocking those rays. And yes, the sun is going into its next cycle. And it's been said by many people that we've had even on the show and on the obelisk that the whatever's coming is going to wake people up, and the quote unquote controllers, whoever they are, the system itself is trying to hold that off as long as possible.
Yeah, that's kind of what that's James True was calling it slow burn. They're trying to almost control it, which he says is kind of inevitably impossible. But who knows? Maybe they could stretch it out 100 years for all we know. And when you talk about that the ritual stuff, I believe there's people that believe 100% that they're doing. The whole satanic thing. I don't buy that. I think that there's definitely evil out there, but I think it's almost entities that are older than Satan. I think it's cults that are older than that. I think there absolutely are death cults out there and stuff doing weird rituals and shit.
Oh yeah,
Cult of Mithras is satanic, but yeah, exactly. I think whether they believe or not, but I believe that belief is power too. And
absolutely.
Alan Moore says that too. That when you believe something, it is true to you. You can make a god, and it exists to you, even if it's fake. It still exists in your head.
Right, and if you can get enough people to believe in it, you got yourself an egregore, which can affect reality.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is when you get into stuff, it's just like,
that's exactly
this is the stuff I love. Yeah,
that's what the Vatican did. They created a giant egregore called God or Yahweh.
Yeah,
and we need contrast. We absolutely need contrast to propel us, and this is why it's important to have these narratives that are that to some of us seem really crazy and off the top, like Satan is controlling the whole world, and yet it serves a purpose. It serves a very good purpose, a very valid purpose. And not only that, there is this idea that I have always held on to, just being an observer in nature and part of nature, and that, by saying that, I'm talking about my own nature as well, that everything's playing its part. So and this is a thing on Nox Mente constantly. Everything's wanting the light. So something that's good for one thing and bad for another thing, that's a perspective. That's a small dot. And it's that proverbial cliche of the spider and the fly. How can you call the fly evil for doing what it does, or the spider evil for doing what it does?
Right. It's the same thing as, how can you really blame someone who's been radicalized since they were a year old, for walking into a building and blowing it up? It's kind of the same thing, right? On a more like human moral scale.
And if we take a macro point of view too, and think about what could possibly have gone on that we weren't privy to. So looking at context on a larger scale, say karmic, if for people that want to think in those terms, and I'm using that as just an open example, you may not have the context to understand why something is happening, because you don't know the causality loop that it goes back, the ripple, the stone that hit the water and created this wave all the way far across space and time to where you are, where you're seeing something that looks atrocious, but possibly at some point was not. And these circumstances have just rippled outward to where you are in your dot, your 0 point, your little star in the sparkly sky of stars.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. It's
Dude, let's all take a hit.
For sure. Never
Gary, pass the Ducci.
That was a good one.
All I got is vape. Sorry.
Yeah.
So what are your ideas of, have you had an OBE? Have you had a near-death experience? How out of your experience have you been, Salvatore?
All of the above, man. This last winter, I rolled my Jeep. I hit black ice and rolled my Jeep down a hill like 3 times in Vail and walked out completely unscathed somehow. And my Jeep was like crushed. All the glass was broken out. And I had like a blood on my hand, and that was it. I like cut my hand with glass. So, and I completely left my body during that. That's because I remember it was one of the only times where I've ever been able. I take that back. It was the only time I can ever recall doing it without actually having to like really work on it. And you know how it is to have to, kind of get into trance state and go deep into that place to get into that vision cycle. But this to me, I just remember thinking to myself, stay as loose as you possibly can. Like, don't even move. Just ride this. And then I hope this doesn't hurt that bad. That's remember. And then I remember watching it. I remember watching it. It was crazy. It was the wildest experience. And that was the most intense one I've ever had. And then, I came back, I was shaking. I was covered in snow, and I grabbed my phone, walked up to the highway, and the ambulance came. And at this, I remember I was just, I'm sure, I think it, because I think that a lot of these chemicals are designed in a certain way. I think it was Peter Carroll that said it's all in your mind. You just don't know how large your mind is. I think a lot of these chemicals help us access this area, this collective, kind of like what you were saying, Nish. And, I think that the adrenaline helped me get to that point where I was able to just kind of do it in the snap of a finger. And I think it was also a survival thing, like knowing that was the safest way to make sure that I didn't fuck. Because a lot of the way you get fucked up in a car accident is you brace, you tighten your legs or you tighten your arms. That's how you get real messed up. The best thing to do is kind of just stay completely limp. And I think it was kind of a survival mechanism to where that was the best way I had in that moment to adapt to my surroundings and stay alive. So,
did you at any point think you were dead?
No, I didn't. I don't think I remember thinking I was going to die and this is it. And that whole life flash before your eye. Because it's like when you leave your body, I'm sure, as you know, especially in an intense situation like that, you're outside of time and space. Like it feels like you're out of it for maybe 15 or 20 minutes, and it's 7 or 8 seconds, It's a very strange, for me at least. I'm not going to speak for everyone, but for me in that moment, that's what it felt like. I remember going through almost a whole process. And
this brings in a good question, and that ties into all of this is the concept of time and how it can be manipulated so easily with stuff here and now that we know. So DMT, meditation. I mean, hell, a good bath. CERN, right on top of the tech, but just soaking in a good bath and just sinking into this, almost like when it's a perfect day out and the weather is not hot or cold, it's just absolutely perfect for you, and there's nothing to no heavy winds or anything. And I experience these days, so it's usually around 75 degrees and there's no wind. Everything's really calm. And it feels to me like another world, like there's a gateway open into the universe, and time does not exist for me. And so the fact that we have put on this robe of time and then changed it here and there with, Gregorian and Julius and these different systems of clocking time, as opposed to, say, what some people still do. The Jewish calendar is still lunar, and the 28-day cycle, that's a pretty solid cycle with the lunar cycle, is a nice way to really rotate, I think. But when we started messing with this is what constitutes a day, this is what constitutes this chunk of time, which is a week, and then a fortnight, and then a month, and this kind of math, that kind of mirrored fractal, started to bring in a whole new level of fuckery, a whole new idea of constraint. And with that idea of these cycles, we then started to have to be accountable. At the end of the month, you've got to pay this. At the end of the month, the landlord is due this. At the end of this cycle, this, and so on. And then, here we are today. We're all just completely battered down with so much that our attention cannot even find its way outside of that wheel, the Catherine wheel. And if we cannot get outside of that,
why is it called the Catherine wheel?
I love that band.
What, Jared?
I've never heard that before.
There's a band called the Catherine Wheel.
There is.
Really?
Yeah, there is, but it's also, I'll let you look that up.
I'm looking it up right now for you.
Jerry's on it.
Yeah, please do.
It's
so Catherine Wheel is an instrument of torturous execution.
Mm-hmm.
I see. So you're calling.
I'm saying time itself, in the way it's been taken over, and we have become slaves to it by agreeing to it, by contracting with it as a mechanism of control, is by design. Obviously, these things didn't come about on their own, and that we contract to it, and we allow ourselves to go round in that wheel. And if we do not have the time outside of it, if we cannot find a way outside of it, then we are trapped in it. If we are trapped in it, then the only way to... Oh, Salvatore, we've lost him. Jer?
I'm here. Did he walk away from his Wi-Fi? There he is.
Hello? Salvatore.
He's back. He's got like a 6-foot radius social distancing circle he has to sit in to get his Wi-Fi.
Sally, you back? What's going on?
Dun 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 dun. Dun. What's
this little light of mine? We need Jesus in here tonight.
Which one?
I don't know. Bring him in.
All right, I'm back here.
All right.
Sorry about that, guys. When I dialed back in, it was like beeping this crazy noise in my ear. Like I thought the Illuminati caught us.
It's programming you. See, we can't talk about the Catherine wheel.
Yeah, no, that was great. So you were calling. That's what I was saying. You were calling time a Catherine wheel is in the torture device. I like that.
Yeah,
that's good. I'm gonna steal that. That's going in the book.
It's a good one. And it's the same wheel, it's the same allegory if we look at Samson and Delilah too. And we separate and we turn that into a proper allegory for something bigger, and not necessarily a soap opera drama. So and the grinding stone that Samson finds himself on. This is again that same idea. and we're dangerous when we get time. We're dangerous when we start to have time to think for ourselves. We're dangerous when we're not on the grind, when the rubber's not on the road. We're dangerous when we are able to question and think for ourselves. We're dangerous when we become awake within the dream.
Yeah, for sure. I've always wondered this, right? What do they say money is power, time is money. Money is the root of all evil. Therefore, time must be the root of all evil and also power, right?
Yeah, look at the bars. I mean, we could almost just construct. I'm sure Jerry has, because the world just doesn't know what a mastermind meme artist Jerry is.
I am not.
I swear, all the good memes I see come across my table, I think are Jerry, because Jerry's open source and Jerry makes all this amazing stuff and puts it out in the world. And so I'm like, Jerry, this is suspect.
I do make a lot of memes, but
and you're genius.
Thank you. The ones that I give to you usually aren't my own.
Well, you can say whatever you want, and I can think whatever I want.
And you can keep thinking I made them, and I love that.
I know, right? It's just like, I think like Rick and Morty, Jerry is really some sort of weird allegory of Jerry.
Rick is Jerry. Yeah.
That's so
Yes.
meta.
Jerry
That's so
is Jerry.
meta.
Okay.
It is
Yeah,
so
okay.
meta.
Yeah.
Y'all just need to know Jerry a little bit deeper. And some of you do. Hello. And so anyway, I'm divulging. I'm degrading, I guess. So with this idea though, Sal, what in your life of dreaming and in this dreamscape, have you been able to pull stuff out that was significant in your outer world, in the world that you consider your reality? And what I'm saying here is anything precognitive, deja vus that relate back to a dream, or stuff that you actually feel you've learned or received information that was special to you and to help you along the way in your journey that you're on.
It's constant. It's incessant. It's never ending. When you start looking for it, it's there. You know, I don't know anyone who's not seen it once they start. The only way you don't see it is if you don't want to, I think. But yeah, I look for that for sure. Absolutely. That's I've had the most insane synchronicities in my life, to the point where I was reading a newspaper article about some random college student. 15 minutes later, I walk into Chick-fil-A and the dude's standing right there in the same exact outfit he's in the picture. It was like mind-blowing, you know? Like, when that happens, what do you do? Like, what do you... It's like Alan Moore. All I could think about is Alan Moore. Are you familiar with Alan Moore, Nish? Are you a fan of Alan Moore?
Of course I am. I love Alan Moore. Yeah.
Well,
and I'm one of those people that defended him, because there's always the haters, like he was a drunk and blah, blah, blah. Well, does that take away from the message he was putting forward to me? No. So fuck off.
Yeah, I mean, he was experimenting with all sorts of shit. But the man's put out some of the best literature of all time. You know, like Watchmen is one of the best comic books ever. What it did, you know, it's so much of his
amazing
top 10. You know, not even his like Wildstorm Spotlight, like all sorts. Like, you know about that's one of the fun. He did a comic. Not to digress too much. He did a comic about the last ones, they were called. It was a bunch of like superheroes who were at the heat death of the universe, and they were just wandering around trying to figure out what the universe was all about. It was wild, dude. Like, who thinks of that? It was like 90s Image Comics stuff. Wildness. You know, these Superman type beings they run into this guy who turns himself into an AI machine, and it's just so ahead of its time. But
wait, yeah, what show is it? What comic is that?
It was called Wildstorm Spotlight, I believe. I may have a word. I think that's what it was called. Wildstorm
He's
Spotlight.
Still alive, by the way?
Yes, he is.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He still writes. He still writes a comic called Providence.
Yeah, DC, right? No, he's with some other. Yeah, I know.
No, some independent label. He doesn't work. He hates working with.
I know. As I said, that came out of my mouth. I remember hearing him say, I'll never work for DC again.
Yeah, right.
I think that's where all the haters I've heard about in more modern times that are that say just atrocious things about him.
Well, I mean, he's always kind of gone against the grain, and kind of the whole reason I brought him up was he I don't know if you remember this story, but he said you could tell like one of his seminal roles was when he took over Swamp Thing, which was DC, Jerry. So he did write for DC, so right there. But he took over Swamp Thing, and he created John Constantine in that run of Swamp Thing.
Right.
And then he later saw John Constantine in a bar. He was so in that like trance zone.
It's so good.
Yeah, he saw John Constantine in a bar, and then he saw him once again later in life, like 10 years later, exact same guy. Blah blah blah.
That kind of echoes the whole invisible story from Grant Morrison.
Well, I mean, yeah, the guys. I mean, the two are very
similar.
Morrison clearly is very heavily influenced by Alan Moore. I love Grant Morrison.
Absolutely. There's a really great interview on YouTube somewhere with Alan Moore talking about when he realized he was magical, or maybe it was his first supernatural experience. I don't remember exactly what the topic was that he asked him. He was talking about how he realized he had summoned something. Power of that revelation,
Glycan. I want to say it's Glycan. It's something like that. He talks about some deity Glycan he summons.
Yes.
Something,
I'll try and find it, and I'll put it in the show notes if I can. But it's a good interview.
Yeah. He also, if you guys ever read Promethea, some of his more recent work, that is just basically an epic. It's basically an epic, Alan Moore 41 episode series of Nox Mente. It's like his feelings on magic and dreamscapes and reality, and it's just kind of his opus, thinly veiled underneath some fiction about a goddess. Very good stuff.
Ooh, I'm intrigued.
Yeah, you probably love it, Nish, honestly.
I'm sure I would. We start mentioning goddess and I get heart shapes in my eye. Big old hearts.
And anime face.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Salvatore, tell us about the dead. Your experience with the dead in your dreams. Have you had experiences with seeing the dead before they died in real life, and also after? Just the whole bowl of soup here.
Well, I'm a big I definitely have a little I don't know if I would call it a shrine, little area in my room with pictures of ancestors, uncles, great aunts, grandpas. Actually, my grandma just died about 2 weeks ago. God rest her soul.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, that's okay.
What was her name?
92, Joan McCaffrey.
Oh.
Yeah, she was quite the monarch.
Yeah, that's a nice age.
Yeah, she lived a great life, and she was still kicking to the last month and a half.
That's a good Italian. She's Italian, right?
She's half Italian. My mom's half Italian, half Irish.
Oh, that's classic. Well, that's classic East Coast.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, you've seen The Sopranos was like, you want to know my mother is Carmela from The Sopranos. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's creepy, honestly. It's creepy.
It's like every one of my aunts is like that.
Yeah, I know, right? Aren't you from Jersey, Jerry?
I'm from Long Island.
Yeah. Long Island, okay, yeah. So yeah, that's it. And you've always been on the West Coast, right, Nish?
I'm I was born in the Midwest.
She's lived everywhere. You'll get to hear her.
Not everywhere, but I have been around, Salvatore.
Yeah, so as far as I was just doing it because and that's kind of how I connect too. For me, it's often geographically, those memories often come up. Did you hear that? My dog just gave me a big old growl. Geographically for me, it's kind of it helps me connect to those memories, and I think that's always been a big thing when it comes to ancestor veneration in the past, whether it be shamanic or druidic or Celtic, all throughout. The Vikings did it. I think that's kind of how they kind of connected their dead to rituals in certain, where their resting places were, and connected them to certain geography. And I think that's kind of where it all came from. I've always had a very deep fascination in my ancestors and tracing them back to where they came from, Italy and Algeria. And I recently just got my mother just got all that information. She's getting to me. She actually just sent it.
So would that be
It's pretty
would that be
cool.
necrogeomancy or geonecromancy?
Yeah, exactly. Good question. I don't know,
Was a
but
joke.
you're on the
It
right
was-
track.
It was a joke, but yeah, just the thought of connecting ancestral
Yeah,
energy
but I don't even
to,
think
to place.
I think it was meant to be a joke, but that's probably like a real thing if you look it up. I bet.
I don't.
You don't think so?
I doubt it.
Well, I'm going to create it then because it sounds pretty cool.
It does sound cool, doesn't it?
Yeah.
People don't realize that necromancy isn't an evil thing. It's just the practice of dealing with the dead, with spirits. It's necromancy.
It's like praying to your ancestors in the end,
Right.
but it's trying to make it real. I mean, it's just taking it to the next level.
No,
It's no
the
different
prefix
than a
necro has
seance.
a bad connotation these days. That's why.
It has for a very long time. I mean, it could have gotten you killed in the Middle Ages or the apparent Middle Ages.
The alleged Middle Ages.
As far as
in some mud flood here.
Yeah, as far as the as that goes, communicating with and that kind of veneration. The guy I mentioned him earlier, the guy who did a lot, woke me up to a lot of it because I wasn't really turning on to a lot of these concepts until after you start waking up, you start realizing that all the stuff is kind of connected. But Rudolph Steiner for me really helped me grasp intellectually how the spirit world works. Spiritual science, as he calls it. I mean, for that guy, I doubt anyone listening this far into this episode is kind of like a novice. But if someone's significant other is listening and they're like an intellectual person, and you want to try to grasp this stuff on that level, he is the best person you can listen to. RudolphSteiner.podbean.com. This is just a guy who just read every single one of his lectures and books out of the goodness of his heart. It's all free. It's on. Just go listen to it. It's amazing to fall asleep to. He's just like, I don't know how anyone could listen to that man because he is so prolific and so intelligent and just such a hard worker and intelligent, just deep being. How could you not take him seriously? I know the stuff he was talking about because everyone talks about theosophy, Helena Blavatsky, but he was doing anthroposophy, and he was just unbelievable. He really helped me wrap my head around, even being aware of the process of venerating the dead as a real thing, and him talking about spirit guides and stuff like that, stuff that would turn me off so much back, years ago, before I really started getting into the occult and the esoteric. So yeah, he's someone I really attribute a lot to showing an intellectual mind like mine to grasp these things, because it's not easy to just accept without someone who's so rooted in the scientific method as they kind of train you to be in society.
Jerry, will you get that link into the show links?
What link?
What's the link again, Salvatore?
RudolphSteiner.podbean.com.
And by the way, it's Helena Blavatsky's birthday
Blavatsky's birthday. Yeah.
No shit.
Thank you,
Madam
Oswald,
B.
for that.
Oh, hey, Oswald.
Now, Rudolph Steiner's got some bad juju.
But this specific blog, it's a specific one.
I know.
Okay.
It's a blog or a podcast? Podbean.
It's a podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like it's not even it's just him literally just reading Rudolph Steiner's work. It's not like him discussing or anything. It's just stuff Rudolph Steiner wrote and
I got it.
had speeches about.
I found it.
And we send it to our private chat in Discord. Thank you, honey.
Welcome, baby.
All right. Carry on,
What were you saying, Jerry, about bad juju?
Steiner's got some. I can't recall exactly what I remember reading about him, but something either about kitty diddling or
I didn't know that.
Something of that ilk.
Yeah, that would be terrible. Maybe I would have to take all that back.
Well, no, I mean,
it's still the good work, though. Like, what are you going to do? I can't change that fact.
I'm not saying don't listen to it. I'm just saying I remember hearing some bad rumors about Steiner.
This
But
is
I've
a
heard
this is
similar
a problem.
I've heard similar things about Blavatsky, and if you read
Every-
into
Yeah.
Blavatsky's work, it's a lot of crap. If you ask me,
Yeah,
it's
but even
globalist nonsense.
Castaneda's and even
Yeah,
not
Castaneda.
Castaneda's, Castaneda. Thank you, Jer. I mean, how many people threw out all that work because it came out that that it was possibly all in his imagination? Who cares? This was, I
Right,
mean, look at the
doesn't matter.
Bibles in the canon. How much of that is channeled? This information that comes forth from people, if we can separate them from really good information they've brought forth that has the ability to move us forward, this is a good thing. And this is what bothers me so much. And we're seeing it in this cultural cannibalism that's going on right now. Is like, just tear it all apart. Nothing. No more. Tear it all. Nothing. We want nothing of it. And yet it's why are we doing this? Steiner put forth amazing concepts, amazing things into the collective pot. Can we just enjoy that and leave him out of it? I understand these small stories that come around and how we get caught up in it, and then people in their ideas of, well, association to that and all this. And this is a point where I feel like sometimes we need to rise above that and try and glean messages. You hear this with John Lamb Lash. You hear this with a lot of people that have interesting messages. And if you're open to the messages, you might get something. And perhaps you might come up out of your little bubble and see that there's a world of bubbles and that your little bubble's not the only fucking bubble. Pardon my French.
That's definitely
Hello?
true. There's definitely only
I'm a
bunch of
pussy on
bubbles out
fire
there.
tonight.
Igor and Fuego.
That's right. Ay, ay, ay. Yes, so I'm grateful for the Steiner work, Salvatore.
Yeah, it definitely helped me out a lot. Like that, if that's true, that would suck, but whatever. He definitely I mean, I just, like I said, I like to anytime anywhere I can get some good information that that satisfies my thirst for deeper truth, and I feel like it's resonating on a level that's outside of my my ego and what I want to be true. I think that that's a good thing. We all, I guess, we all do struggle with things as human beings. Some things suck more than others, but yeah, I mean, I remember the first time I read something like truly esoteric. Like it was like drinking water. This is probably 10 or 12 years ago at this point. This is before I was even really deeply into it. But this is kind of when I first realized I had that's what the thirst was reading it. I don't even remember what it might have even been, something by Peter Carroll or Ramses Dukes or something like that. And I remember reading it, and it just made so much sense to me and resonated on a level I had not been able to articulate up to that point. And it just felt like getting a drink of water in my soul that I hadn't had for God knows how long.
Yeah, that's a very important thing. That's like that whole ecstasis idea, and if we allow it, we can ride that wave and move into greater heights and gain something very powerful. You don't have to subscribe to the person or the person's ideas even. It's just gleaming little bits of jewels that aid you along your path in this grand labyrinth we're in the darkness of the void that we're in. And that's what's important. So what I'm suggesting is not being followers and not subscribing to individuals and the individuals' hubris. I'm saying, let's look at all this greatness that's bubbled up, that's bubbling in the realm of dreams that we can access, and hold on to what is effervescent and pushes us further up into a sense of real gnosis. and then push further from there. And this is what art does outside and apart from the people that create the art. And this is what great dreaming does. This is what lucid dreaming does as well. We get in there, we're in this field. This field is partly our field, is partly your own stuff, your psyche, the muckety muck. And then you realize, okay, this is my house. I can clean it. And by cleaning it, you realize, oh, look at this treasure I have over here. I'm going to open this book within the dream. I'm going to open this tome. It's up in this weird attic with a million ways to get to it. And here's this tome. It's like a video game. You open it up and somehow you power up to a new level or you get a new tool. And it does it. So next time you're in that dream, you know how to get to it, right? You've got the cheat sheet on that, and then you can move further. And so at the end of all that, it doesn't really matter how the labyrinth is laid out. It's just that you have this autonomic sense of how to get from one point to the next, which inspires one to move forward. And by moving forward, we're claiming all that is behind us as well. And there's momentum here. It keeps going.
Yeah. I'm trying to even think how to respond to that. I was
sorry, I'm on a roll tonight.
Yeah.
That's the Ducci.
You're spitting out like bombs.
Where's my beats?
It's
mind dropping.
You don't
bombs.
always have to answer her. Just go, yeah, good point, and then move on.
Yeah.
Jerry knows. Well, Jerry and I've been married for like 35 years. You know, I've seen the sharts in his underwear. So that's a joke, everyone. Jerry is single and eligible.
And chart free.
And chart free. And a gentleman, by the way. Is that even, can we say that nowadays?
No,
is
chivalry gets you canceled.
Yeah. What a sad, sad, sad dream. See, this is the thing I want to ask you now, Salvatore, is it possible? So you mentioned SMQ earlier with did we die in 2012? Do you think it's possible that you're dreaming right now, that this is all part of something that you are not fully aware of, but it's like a dream. It is a dream in a way, and yet the stakes feel real. So what's going on for you? What is reality?
I think that, I think that's what it is. I think that it is some sort of a test of a dream. I mean, I can't believe that we're on this bowl hurling through space, that we're in this tiny, insignificant universe, that we're just this insignificant drop, maybe in the scheme of time of everything else that has existed. But I don't think, as far as space goes, that's all we are. I think that, I think it is a dream. I think that we're here to grow and become better, and it can't just be this. It can't be. It can't, because for us to evolve from whatever, there still has to be something within us still directing us. It can't just be our outside environment. There's still things within us that come up. And what is the bicameral mind? Is that what it's called? About how we were evolving. We thought when we first developed self-talk, we thought that it was the voice of God, and God was speaking to us, and that's kind of how we got the mythology of religion to begin with. It's a wild theory.
Yeah, it's a bicameralism.
Bicameralism, yeah, and I think that's a big theme in Westworld, which I still haven't really watched most of. But
there are multiple themes in Westworld.
Yeah.
Westworld is amazing. I know that not everyone's there with me on it, but for me, it is the fringe. It surpasses fringe for me. It's amazing.
For me, it was The Leftovers. The Leftovers was that show
really?
for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that show was just like, oof. Talk about like commentary on like this question you just asked. Like The Leftovers would probably be my best answer. Like, we're talking about art as an expression of all this.
The Leftovers is awesome. Yeah.
The Leftovers is my answer to that question. If you've seen that show, that's kind of like my answer to that question, which is very ironic if you understand the way that show answers questions within itself.
Salvatore, is that the one with the hot cop?
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably,
Ooh,
yeah.
Ooh, honey. Yes.
And that,
Yeah.
that actor,
that show's main level after level of good. And for me, it starts with that delicious hot cop.
that
Yeah.
actor, I forget his name.
He's married to like Jennifer Aniston.
It's
I
Justin. Think. It's Justin Theroux.
Yeah, Justin Theroux. He
Ooh,
plays
honey.
a character in
Fever.
the limited series on Netflix called Maniac.
Yeah, I watched that. Yeah,
which is
I haven't seen that.
pretty interesting.
it's worth watching for
It's
sure.
worth watching
It wasn't
it.
like incredible, but it's
No.
worth watching for like an analysis.
You're not going to find a
Leftovers was
message
really
in there.
good.
You're not going
The
to find a message.
Leftovers was really
I mean, like
good.
the symbolism within it. I thought there was a lot of weird symbolism with the AI and the, you know. I don't
Yeah,
want to get too
with
much into the spoilers.
The pills being A, B, and C. I agree.
Yeah.
There's symbolism in there, but you're not going to learn a life lesson.
No, definitely not.
But like I said, that hot cop, honey, that had me tuning in every week or whenever, you know. Well, Liv Tyler was in it too, and she's delicious.
Correct.
Oh, geez,
Yeah.
where's my mind today?
Yeah, where is your mind?
I
Mitch?
know, Jesus, I need to masturbate. I'm gonna let Igor out of the cage tonight. Wow.
Oh wow.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, is right. This will be watch. So something dramatic will happen, and then Igor will get blamed.
It's 11 p.m. Do you know where your Igor is?
Igor is my egregore. Anyway, sorry, Salvatore. Right though, the nature of reality, and that's where you were tying in the leftovers.
Yeah, exactly. It was it's a very interesting show about the nature of reality, and I'm answering this question with this show that in and of itself answers questions in a very abstract and unique way. It's by Damon Lindelof, who was involved in Lost, which unfortunately I tried rewatching personally, which I think is another show that kind of correlates to my view on things. You know, it's easier to describe it by artists. Right? That's kind of what to bring this full circle. It's kind of what the High Beyond is all about. Is kind of just putting my theory of everything into this somewhat fictionalized world within a world. It's about a world that operates underneath, you know, the stuff that we care about, the things that we're looking for, the world that exists underneath the world. That's what it's about to a more dramatized degree, where, you know, things are happening, occult happenings are happening to some people in a more exaggerated degree, and that's about the only place it's fictionalized. And that's where I'm trying to show my view of reality. And there's a lot of these shows, you know, they speak to me, and like Nish said, I think they're even when you're using your imagination, you're still channeling things, you're still pulling things out of somewhere. You're still, I think, you know, I said it before, a lot of things are magic before people understand that they're magic, or however you want to know that word. Has a lot of connotation behind it, and it's heavy, but I think that it's very important. And I think art is one of the best ways to express it. And I've definitely pulled a shitload of short stories as a writer and things of that nature. There's, by the way, if you go to my Twitter, it's at Sal Antithesis. There's a link to like a Medium. I have a few like flash fiction pieces and whatnot up there. But that's what I try to do. I just try to, you know, pull things from everywhere and apply it to my reality and channel what I can from this place that we're all kind of trying to reach in our own way. And
well, what do you think? So, what is the soul to you?
definitely not a random collection of synapses firing. It's something that exists outside of our physical body, right? We're kind of like a meat suit mech warrior. It is what's on after and goes to the next realm that you're talking about. Like which reality, what the layers upon layers of reality that there are, wherever these things go to exist, the egregores, there's things out there that your soul is an everlasting piece of energy, of light, a divine spark, if you will. It's the thing that you access when I'm in the flow state. Like the place that's easiest for me to get into a flow state. You know, I'm a basketball coach. I played basketball all my life. there's times where I can get into the basketball court and I can just completely control reality. It's like, it doesn't happen often. It's not, but you've seen it. You've seen it on TV if you watch sports. You've seen people. There's an arbitrary thing that we all possess within us that, like, some people excel much better when the pressure is on. They can't do anything until they feel this immense amount of pressure. When they feel this pressure, they always perform. They're always there. That's an aspect of reality that is immeasurable. It's impossible to really quantify that, to really measure it and say this is that. It's some sort of intangible that exists that makes things more than the sum of their parts. That I think it's things like that that cause people to realize that there is more out there. Because we have this power, this divine spark that comes from our soul that allows us to do things of this nature. And everyone kind of has it in a different way that allows them to access different talents and abilities that allow us to work kind of harmoniously, potentially at least, or at least in small communities, as some sort of fucking weird superorganism or whatever we are. Because as much as you look at the world and you see the evil, you see the lies, and you see the controllers, that stuff is kind of necessary. Like, you kind of need bullshit. Like, you can't really be truly happy without experiencing some bullshit, you know? You can't. The lower you go, the higher you can get, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I absolutely am with you on that. It's so necessary. And we're better. And think about every time you've gone through something adversarial, some struggle, some pain, some depression, anything that made you stretch, push further, that once you've come through something difficult, there is a certain, the payoff is really big internally. It's it may not appear that way at first, but ultimately down the road, the payoff from these kinds of hardships is huge. And on that soul level, and I'm with you, Sal, that there is, for me, there is no doubt I have no doubt. I feel like I've always had this feeling, like from my first memory of coming in going, oh shit, I'm having a sleep paralysis mode, then realizing I'm in a little baby suit. That from that moment, I knew I was more than this, and more than synaptic responses and neurons and nerve endings and flesh and all that. And so even when I was the most closed off in my life, I still felt that spark. It was still there. And it was still there behind my eyes. You can look at people and see who's got that. It really does shine. And so that's enough for me. I don't know what else to say. That is actually enough for me. But then once you start piling on successes from being downtrodden, and you get a sense of, oh, this is actually a good thing, and you move forward with that, it becomes, this is, for me, this is when the idea of game like started to come in. So you get a little bit older and you realize, like Saturn return 27 to 30, you start realizing that really this patterning is very similar, of course, to what our oral traditions and our stories that turned into games, board games, jump rope games, video games, now VR games. They're all tied in and back to some sort of spark, some sort of source. They're mirroring out. And that perspective alone has always kept me above board, is feeling triumphant rather than a victim. And having had a very, very difficult early part of my life. First half of my life was very substantially difficult under anyone's terms. And so I feel like the soul is something in us that is eternal. And we absolutely can embrace it and allow it as a fountain of youth to wash over us and move us forward. And part of this is the idea of awakening within the dream, of becoming lucid now.
Yeah.
Isn't that what getting red pilled does, though?
Absolutely,
in some way?
Jerry.
Yeah.
That's absolutely it. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
another way of saying it. And that's
Yeah.
why there's so many, right? Look how many people are now really under the weight of all that's going on, are in their own ways. Everyone's got their own way of expression and looking at it. And in that way, the snowflake thing works for me. It doesn't work as a mechanism of self-deprecation and special behavior and cancel culture and all the grossness, but in the way that we all come to our own conclusions and awakenings in a unique way. And that's what's beautiful. There's where the beauty is, in the cutting of the paper to a snowflake piece of parchment that gets burned like a prayer and thrown out into the winds, and blown by the winds of our soul.
So profound.
Oh, isn't it though? I'm feeling it. I should have a cocktail. It's been like 6 weeks.
I'm gonna have that tattooed on my chest.
I should have a cocktail.
No, whatever she just all blown in the wind thing. Believe I forgot it
I'm
already.
actually gonna have a cocktail this Friday with my girls.
Do you want to give a shout out to our 33 live viewers right now?
Oh yeah, hey,
33.
33. We love y'all. And usually Salvatore is out there, right, Sal?
Yeah, I'm in the live chat ever so often. I usually catch it. It's a great podcast to listen to. Like when I go, I'll go to bed at like 10 o'clock, listen for an hour and a half, fall asleep afterwards. It's perfect podcast before bed, I think. You're talking about dreams and whatnot often,
What do you, and I'm sure Jerry's asked if there are questions or anything, but on kind of getting close to wrapping here.
Yeah,
give us, before like plugging anything, what are your ideas? Hold on. Wrap this up with something dream related for you that has been profound.
Just really the act of taking the energy to do the work to become lucid and to keep a dream journal. I think those are two things in my life that have had really the most profound effects and besides the dreams themselves, and having really, I feel like the more I did that, the more intricate, and I think Nish was saying it earlier, you get to this tome, et cetera, and you remember how to get to that tome, and you go from there. It's like Zelda, whatever. I think that's what she compared it to. I think it's very similar to that. For me, that's what did it. It was the work to become lucid, really concentrating. It for me, it was starting during the day and looking at my hands and asking myself if I was in a dream or not. And it's a simple act, and it started with that, and eventually I just started doing it in my dreams. It took a while. It took a very long while, really. But doing that led me to more consciously be able to interpret the symbolic nature of my un and subconscious, as well as leading me down the path of like trying to get into remote viewing. And I find that a lot more difficult because having OBEs in my past and things of that nature, that's a pretty cool it's a pretty cool path to go down. I think it's good because ever since I was a kid, I've kind of had that place. I think anyone that would be drawn to a podcast like this probably feels pretty similar, that to have that place to go that you kind of create on your own, whether I think that foundation is what leads to being able to do the work in the dreamscape and in real life to kind of not get bogged down by how dark and out of control reality is getting right now, because things right now are really wild. Like there really is not much of a differentiation anymore. Like honestly, 9 times out of 10, my dream life is way more quote unquote normal than what's going on in reality. Like dreams, like you go to a restaurant, everyone's just eating and it's full. You know, like that's like a weird, bizarre thing now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, that's part of what is strange about. So traditionally, like finding your hands in the dream, you're looking for signals that are out of place to let your analytical mind know that something's different and you may be dreaming. And so now with the world having gone through the hooking glass and we're looking at this inverse type of reality, the
Right.
outer
Like what
world,
looks out of place. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
it's all out of play. Everything is so bizarre that it I think it really is a good exercise right now to question, and this is in line with all the stuff we already know about deep fakes, new holographics, all the stuff that's not in the woo-woo realm, that's actually out there with people like, organizations like MIT getting behind them, and not to mention all the government stuff. What is real? Honest. That anymore is not just a
Well, isn't that kind of the
philosophical
point?
question.
Isn't that kind of the whole point of what they're all doing? Aren't they just, isn't everything they're doing just a unnatural replication of something natural? Aren't they really
Yes.
just creating their own reality? Which to me, it feels like the end game of maybe trapping souls, consciousness, divine sparks within this realm.
Jerry, who was just talking about that with us? I think it was Max Egan.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, and he was saying,
I need to listen to that. I can't wait to listen to that.
oh, it's so good. We all love Max. And he was really, really parsing that out in a way that made a lot of sense to me, but Max always makes sense to me. So, right.
Yeah, he's
well,
great. I love Max Egan.
With that in mind, though, I mean, we do need to look at this seriously and go, well, what is the game here? I mean, it's above a political system that's happening on the world. Yes, that's happening, and that's part of what's questioning why we should be questioning this reality, period, because it's happening at a global scale. And yes, we can see documents, from ISIS Unveiled, and we can see long-term plans and dystopian literature and art telling us that this is an idea that exists within our own collective unconscious. But here we are, and it doesn't matter how we got here now. We're here. So let's examine all this stuff and stop bickering amongst ourselves as to how we got here. Let's start really questioning, what do we do now that we're here? And by starting with that is, what the hell is real?
Yeah.
Seriously, what the hell is real? I could be a bot right now. Seriously, that way deep fakes are, my voice could be I could be an AI. So, and there's nothing I could do to convince you that I'm not. You know what I'm saying? This is where we're at. And that's a very dangerous place. That's that whole double thing where, you're shooting, which one do you shoot? When you're seeing something go on.
I know someone who thinks that like all the news is generated that way. Like the people on TV aren't real. They're just like Don Lemon is just some kind of deep fake AI thing.
Well, the tech is there now, Jaron. It's not even disputable. So it's possible, right?
It is.
It is possible. And that's the thing. That's the very first step towards lucidity, is saying it is possible. This is possible. And moving further into those ideas makes lucidity one step closer to being a full-on OBE. And,
I think right now,
reinversing it back into the dream realm.
I think right now, one of the most important things you could do to be lucid is A, to ask that question, and B, it's to understand that there are ideas out there that are going to be hated on, and not to fall into this trap of hating everything or listening to nothing. You have to love everything or nothing someone says. You know what I mean? You can't fall into that trap, because there's so much. So like I've learned like 2 or 3 new ideas, just 3 or 4 new ideas tonight about the nature of reality that I love. Like, you don't have to, like, I can draw from all of those. I think it's so important to understand that and keep that in mind
Yeah.
and not fall into the trap of two extremes.
Absolutely. That is a trap. And then I have one last question and I'm finished is, so you've said a couple times you're a basketball coach. How tall are you, Salvatore?
I'm 6'1".
Okay.
Did
I'm
you see that
surprised.
question in chat, or did you just
I'm
come
not
up
in
with it?
chat. No, Jerry. You know
God
when I'm in
damn.
chat, I start mentioning stuff. Why is that? No, that question logically had to come up. Was it Oswald?
No.
But that just seems like a logical question.
Oswald's question was, where is it here? I lost it. No, someone else asked that actually. What do you think of Neil? What do you think of Neil Gaiman?
Oh, dude, I mean, Neil Gaiman has some great stuff. Sandman,
Good Omens.
Yeah, Good Omens.
Stardust.
Phenomenal writer. He's a phenomenal writer.
I agree.
He's had to talk to girls at party. There's so many things I can't even think of right now. He's a great writer, though. He's kind of fallen onto the whole, like, you know, how it is now. Influencer, blue check bullshit.
Yeah, but he's lefty.
That's what I mean.
I liked it better when we didn't know our idol's political nature.
Exactly. Like, that's exactly what we were talking about earlier. Like, my fantasy is my fantasy. My escapism is my escapism. That's why I haven't watched Westworld, because I can't turn my mind off and watch that show. I need like a notebook and a pen in front of me to watch that show. There's that show's so loaded with ideas that I want to like break down and crack open. You know, I can't. Some of them hidden and some of them, intentionally part of it. You know, I think not necessarily hidden, but I think a lot of these like shows like Westworld are being used to prepare us for things that are coming down the line for sure. As far as what's real and what isn't, the lines are going to get even more blurred because of things like that.
Yeah. This is what's great though. And having these kinds of chats, I think, take us further along, and hopefully more people can have these kinds of chats and with some laughter and jokes. I am so saddened to see how serious everyone is. I hope to never lose the levity ever. You know, as long as I've got breath, there's Igor, and as long as there's Igor, there's a laugh. So on that note, it's been a great pleasure, Salvatore.
Yeah, this was fun. Thanks a lot for having me on, guys. This was a blast. I'm probably going to. My dog's bugging me right now, so I'm probably gonna take him out and then listen to Max Egan.
Oh, what kind of dog?
Get a double dose of Jerry and Niche. I got a border collie pit bull mix. He just turned 4.
Oh, what a sweetie pie. I love the animals. You know that.
Yes,
more than
I do.
People's.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Sal. It's been great. Thank you, Nish. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Next week, we've got another Nox Mente, because I scheduled everything wrong, even though it's a new one. So next week's Nox Mente with Stacy Jewell from the Bejeweled podcast, host of. And the week after that, we'll be back to an obelisk with, I think, Alex Stein.
And you know what?
Is that right?
I want to just, I want to say something here.
What'd I do?
No, not to you.
Okay.
But to people out in the world that find this our little underground podcast, that the Nox Mente is always been about dreams and all that go along with it, and how we interplay dreams into the world. And we veer off sometimes, and we're veering off more these days. Jerry and I don't have rules, and this is open source. And so just know that our other show, The Obelisk, is not Nox Mente, and if dreams come into it, it's because they came into a conversation. But that show's not about dreams. But as far as I'm concerned, everything is about dreams. So people coming in need to understand that difference, because we got a very ugly feedback that absolutely kind of triggered me in a way, because if they'd actually been listening, they'd realize this difference before leaving such an ugly set of words to soil us.
Or it was just a hater.
Well, yeah, of course, I think it is just a hater. And so that I just want to make that clear. And there are differences, and we all have choices. If you don't like the show, don't listen. It's that simple. I do that in my life. It's a really great thing to do. Have choice and exercise it. With that note, honey, I love y'all.
Okay. All right, everybody. Have a great night, and thanks so much for listening.
Thanks a lot, guys. Take it easy.
Smash that like button.